Giselle sat at the sleek glass desk of their shared apartment, her fingers idly tracing the rim of her coffee mug. Morning sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, catching the faint dust motes that danced lazily in the air. She watched Jacob across the room, typing furiously at his laptop, a faint crease on his forehead, and for a moment, her heart swelled with the same admiration she had felt when she first met him. Jacob had always been ambitious. From the day they met, he dreamed big, always sketching out plans for businesses, startups, and future ventures. Giselle had fallen for that fire in his eyes, but more importantly, she had fallen for the man who believed in her equally. She had supported him, financially and emotionally, even when it meant stretching herself thin. Late nights reviewing numbers, helping him network, and comforting him after business failures, it had all been worth it, or so she had thought. Lately, though, something had shifted. Jacob had become distant, distracted, and strangely secretive. Giselle brushed it off as stress from the startup, until the messages started. At first, they were subtle, a smile from someone in a group chat, an accidental glance at a phone screen. Then came the patterns that couldn't be ignored, a sudden change in schedule, late-night meetings with his secretary, Anna. Giselle's heart sank the first time she noticed it. Anna. The name alone made her stomach churn. Young, ambitious, strikingly confident, Anna had been Jacob's assistant for just over a year. Giselle had trusted her, or at least, she thought she did. But now, watching Jacob laugh softly at a message on his phone while sitting only a few feet away from her, Giselle realized that something more than work was going on. For a week, Giselle stayed quiet. She didn't confront Jacob immediately. Instead, she observed. She had learned early in life that patience often revealed more than confrontation. She started paying closer attention to details, the way Jacob's shirt was faintly scented with perfume she didn't recognize, the way his hand lingered over his phone, or the unusual secrecy over documents he usually shared with her. Her unease grew worse when she discovered the first document, a seemingly innocuous contract left carelessly on the coffee table. At first glance, it looked like a routine company paper. But a closer look made her stomach knot. Her name was there. Her inheritance. The fine print. Jacob had been planning, scheming behind her back. Not only was he cheating, but he was also trying to strip her of the very fortune she had always counted on. Giselle closed the laptop and sat back, taking a deep breath. Anger flared inside her, hot and burning, but she forced it down. This was not a time for rash decisions. No, she needed clarity. She needed a plan. She decided to test the waters. That evening, she casually mentioned the contract while setting the table for dinner. "Jacob, I saw the document today," she said, keeping her voice neutral. "I'm curious, did you mean for me to sign that?" Jacob looked up, startled. He quickly masked it with a charming smile. "Oh, that? It's just some company paperwork. Nothing for you to worry about, love." Giselle nodded slowly, letting the information sink in. The lie was too quick, too smooth. It confirmed her fears. Over the next few days, she watched Jacob more closely. He would meet Anna behind closed doors, often stepping out for private phone calls. He laughed at her jokes in public, but she noticed the way his eyes lit up differently when texting someone else. Giselle was not a woman to be underestimated. She began her own quiet investigation. She accessed files on Jacob's work computer under the guise of helping with accounting, traced emails, and even noted financial transactions that didn't align with what she knew about the business. What she found made her blood run cold. Anna was not just flirting. She was actively conspiring with Jacob. They had arranged meetings with lawyers, drafted contracts, and created a plan to take Giselle's inheritance completely. And the worst part? Jacob had never intended to reward her for all the sacrifices she made. Every late night, every sleepless night supporting the company had been taken for granted. It would have been easy to confront him, to yell, to cry, to storm out. But Giselle was never one for dramatic displays when strategy was required. Instead, she planned carefully. She would not only protect herself, but also turn the tables in a way neither Jacob nor Anna could see coming. The first step was subtle. Giselle began planting seeds of doubt. She asked innocent questions, commented casually about her own finances, and subtly hinted she was aware of the importance of certain contracts. Jacob, blinded by arrogance and his affair, didn't catch on. He assumed she was still the trusting, supportive wife he had always known. Then came the small tests. Giselle sent emails to Anna, disguised as casual inquiries about company matters, and monitored the responses. Anna's tone was always sharp, impatient, revealing more than intended. Giselle took screenshots. Every interaction was a piece of the puzzle. One evening, while Jacob was at a late-night meeting with potential investors, Giselle decided to take a risk. She opened the contract files he had been hiding. Her heart pounded as she read through clauses that could have stripped her of her inheritance entirely. But she noticed a loophole, a tiny, almost insignificant clause that could be leveraged if used cleverly. Her mind raced. Yes, she whispered to herself, a slow smile spreading across her face. They're about to learn what happens when you underestimate someone. The next day, she appeared calm and cheerful, greeting Jacob with a bright smile and serving breakfast as if nothing was wrong. Anna arrived later to drop off some paperwork, unaware that Giselle had already prepared her own plan. "Morning, Anna," Giselle said warmly, shaking her hand. "I was just reviewing some company files. Could you help me clarify a few points?" Anna, surprised but eager to show off, leaned over the desk, unaware she was walking straight into Giselle's trap. Every word she spoke was being carefully recorded, every document handled with Giselle's strategic placement. Giselle knew the real game had begun. The affair, the contract, the betrayal, they had all underestimated her intelligence, her patience, her resolve. Jacob and Anna thought they were in control. They thought they had planned everything perfectly. But Giselle was about to pull a stunt that would leave them exposed, humiliated, and powerless. For now, though, she waited. Patience, she reminded herself, was the deadliest weapon, and she intended to use it to its fullest. Giselle woke early the next morning, her mind racing with possibilities. The sunlight had barely touched the city skyline when she was already dressed, coffee in hand, scrolling through the emails she had secretly accessed from Jacob's work account. Each message from Anna made her pulse quicken. They were reckless, confident, and completely unaware of how closely she was watching. She printed out copies of every suspicious document, highlighting dates, amounts, and clauses that could be used against them. Then she arranged them neatly on the dining table, creating a timeline that mapped out Jacob's deceit step by step. She paused for a moment, staring at the neat pile of evidence. It wasn't just proof, it was power. And Giselle had never felt more alive. The first step of her plan was subtle but effective, to test their overconfidence. Giselle drafted an email to Anna, carefully worded to sound casual, but designed to provoke a revealing reaction. "Hi Anna. I was reviewing the latest budget allocations. Could you clarify why there's a transfer labeled personal account under Jacob's name? I might be misunderstanding something. Thanks." She hit send and leaned back, letting the silence stretch. Within minutes, her phone buzzed. Anna's reply was sharp, defensive, and revealing. "Giselle, that transfer is unrelated to you. Please focus on your work. Jacob will explain if necessary." Giselle smiled faintly. It was exactly the tone she had anticipated. Anna's arrogance and irritation betrayed more than words ever could. Meanwhile, Jacob was oblivious. He waved her off when she asked about his late-night meetings, distracted by his own selfish schemes. Giselle noted every reaction, every hesitation, storing them in her mind like pieces of a chess game. By midday, she had set up another small trap. She invited Jacob to lunch under the pretense of discussing a potential investor pitch. Over sandwiches at a quiet cafe, she watched him carefully. "Jacob," she began casually, "I was thinking about the contract you mentioned the other day. It seems a bit complicated. I might need legal advice." Jacob's smile faltered for a split second, just enough to make Giselle's heart leap. "Complicated? It's just standard procedure, love. You don't need to worry." Giselle nodded, pretending to accept his answer. But inside, her mind raced. She knew that if she could make him overconfident, he would reveal even more, and soon. That evening, Giselle staged another, accidental discovery. While organizing the office space at home, she found a folder that had been carelessly left behind by Jacob. Inside were detailed financial plans, meeting schedules, and, most importantly, the original inheritance contract. She skimmed through it carefully, committing every key point to memory. The loophole she had noticed earlier was small, a clause that required both parties' signatures for any transfer of assets. If she played her cards right, she could turn this against both Jacob and Anna. The next morning, Giselle started subtly manipulating the situation at home. She suggested that Jacob and Anna meet in the living room to discuss important company strategy. She watched silently from the corner, pretending to sort files, as the two of them bent over papers, unaware that she was recording the conversation on her tablet. Anna, as always, was arrogant, clearly trying to impress Jacob. "Once we get this contract signed, Giselle won't have any say in the company's decisions," she whispered, barely glancing at Giselle. Jacob nodded, clearly proud of their plan. "Exactly. She won't even suspect until it's too late." Giselle bit the inside of her cheek to keep from laughing. They had walked straight into her trap. She quietly ended the recording and backed out, pretending she was still organizing files. Over the next few days, she repeated these small but strategic tests. She met with a trusted lawyer friend under the guise of discussing unrelated investments, sharing the contract without revealing her full plan. Her friend confirmed that the loophole was indeed exploitable, but it had to be done carefully, without giving Jacob and Anna any chance to suspect. Giselle began envisioning her next move. It would be bold, precise, and devastating. She needed a moment where both Jacob and Anna would fully expose themselves, where their own greed and arrogance would lead them into her snare. It came one afternoon when Jacob asked Giselle to attend a private negotiation at the company office. She agreed, pretending to be oblivious to the significance. At the office, she set the stage carefully. She placed documents on the table in a way that would force Anna to reveal her intentions. Then, she engaged in casual conversation, subtly guiding the topic toward the contract and inheritance. Anna, unable to resist, started talking. "Once Giselle signs off, everything will be mine," she said with a sly smile, glancing at Jacob. "We've worked too hard to let her take credit for this." Jacob laughed nervously, but the recording on Giselle's phone caught every word. It was undeniable proof of their collusion, their intent, and their betrayal. Giselle's heart raced, not with fear, but with anticipation. The next stage was close. That evening, she invited Jacob home for dinner. He walked in, confident, unaware that Giselle had planned everything. The apartment was lit warmly, the table set elegantly, as if nothing were wrong. Giselle greeted him with a calm smile. "Dinner's ready," she said softly. "I thought we could talk about the company's future together." Jacob glanced around, shrugging off the warm ambience as a simple gesture of care. He had no idea that Giselle was leading him straight into her hands. After dinner, she casually brought up the contract again. "You know, Jacob, I've been thinking about that document. It's so important that we both fully understand it before signing anything, isn't it?" Jacob, blinded by his own confidence, nodded. "Of course. Nothing happens without your approval, Giselle." She smiled faintly. That was all she needed. They were overconfident. They were sloppy. And she had every piece of evidence ready to expose them. Giselle spent the rest of the night planning her final move. The recordings were backed up, the documents highlighted, and the legal loophole ready to exploit. All that remained was the right moment to strike. As she went to bed, Giselle felt a thrill unlike any she had experienced before. For weeks, she had endured deceit, betrayal, and humiliation. But now she was in control. And when the day came to confront Jacob and Anna, it would not just be a confrontation, it would be a revelation they would never forget. The day Giselle decided to end the game, she woke with a strange calmness. There was no shaking, no anger rising in her chest. Only clarity. The kind that came after pain had settled and hardened into resolve. Jacob was already awake, pacing the bedroom while talking on the phone. His voice was low, careful. Giselle didn't need to hear the words to know who he was speaking to. Anna. She watched him from the bed, her face unreadable. When he ended the call and noticed her eyes on him, he smiled casually, as if nothing was wrong. Big day today, he said. We're finalizing a few things at the office. Giselle nodded. I know. Something in her tone made him pause, but he brushed it off. Jacob had grown used to underestimating her. It was the mistake that would ruin him. At the office, the atmosphere buzzed with tension. Jacob had called for a private meeting, just the three of them. Giselle, Jacob, Anna. No lawyers. No witnesses. Exactly what Giselle wanted. Anna arrived first, dressed sharply, her confidence obvious in the way she walked and spoke. She barely acknowledged Giselle, offering only a tight smile before turning her attention fully to Jacob. They sat around the conference table, papers spread neatly in front of them. Giselle had placed the documents herself, carefully chosen and deliberately ordered. Jacob cleared his throat. Let's get started. Today is about finalizing the contract and moving forward. Giselle folded her hands calmly. Before we do, I have a few questions. Anna sighed softly, clearly irritated. We've been over this already. Giselle turned to her, eyes sharp but voice steady. Have we? Anna stiffened. Jacob shot Giselle a warning look. Giselle, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time, she interrupted gently. She slid one document across the table. This clause here. The one about asset transfer. Why does it require my signature after yours, Jacob? Jacob frowned. That's standard. Giselle nodded. Is it also standard to move inheritance funds into a personal account before final approval? Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Anna's eyes widened slightly before she quickly masked it. You're misunderstanding the paperwork. No, Giselle said quietly. I'm understanding it perfectly. She reached into her bag and placed her phone on the table. With one tap, she played the recording. Anna's voice filled the room. Once Giselle signs off, everything will be mine. Jacob's face drained of color. Giselle let the recording play longer. Their whispered plans. Their laughter. Their certainty that she was blind and foolish. Anna stood abruptly. You recorded us? Giselle met her gaze. You recorded yourselves. I only listened. Jacob slammed his hand on the table. This is illegal. Giselle smiled faintly. I checked. It isn't. She stood then, walking slowly around the table, her heels clicking softly against the floor. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. You cheated on me, she said calmly. That alone would have been enough to leave. But you went further. You tried to take my inheritance. You tried to erase me. Jacob's voice cracked. Giselle, we can fix this. Anna scoffed. Don't be dramatic. You're overreacting. That was when Giselle turned fully toward her. You, she said, voice cold now, thought ambition made you clever. But it only made you careless. She pulled out another folder and dropped it onto the table. Inside were printed emails, transaction records, and signed acknowledgments Anna hadn't even remembered sending. Anna flipped through them, her hands trembling. You used company resources for personal gain, Giselle continued. You encouraged fraud. You colluded to steal from a legal spouse. Anna looked at Jacob desperately. You said this was safe. Jacob couldn't meet her eyes. Giselle returned to her seat and folded her hands again. Now here's the part you didn't expect. She slid the final document forward. This is an amended contract. Completely legal. Reviewed by my lawyer. It activates the loophole you ignored. Jacob scanned it, his breathing quickening. This transfers controlling shares. To me, Giselle finished. Immediately. Anna shook her head. That's not possible. It is, Giselle said softly. Because Jacob already signed the preliminary approval last week. Jacob's head snapped up. That was just a draft. Giselle smiled. A binding one. The room felt smaller now, tighter. The power had shifted, unmistakably. Jacob stood, pacing. You planned this. Yes, Giselle said. While you planned to destroy me. Anna's voice rose in panic. You can't do this. I'll report you. Giselle leaned back, calm and composed. To whom? I already sent copies to the board. Anna froze. Jacob's shoulders slumped. What do you want? Giselle considered him for a moment. This man she had loved. This stranger who had betrayed her so easily. I want my name cleared. My inheritance protected. And your control over anything tied to me ended. She stood. You'll step down. Quietly. Anna exploded. You're ruining everything. No, Giselle said, turning to her at last. You did. Security knocked lightly on the door. Giselle had called them minutes earlier. Escort Miss Anna out, she said calmly. She no longer works here. Anna screamed as she was led away, her confidence crumbling into fury and fear. Jacob remained seated, broken. As Giselle walked out of the office, the weight she had carried for weeks finally lifted. She didn't feel victorious in the way she expected. She felt free. But the story wasn't over yet. Jacob still had one move left. And Giselle knew it. The silence that followed Giselle's departure from the office felt louder than any argument. Jacob sat alone in the conference room long after Anna had been escorted out, staring at the contract that had ruined him. For the first time since his startup began, he realized how deeply he had miscalculated. He had mistaken kindness for weakness. That night, Jacob returned to the apartment they once shared, his steps heavy and uncertain. Giselle had already packed most of her things. The rooms felt emptier, colder, stripped of the warmth she had unknowingly provided for years. He found her standing by the window, gazing out at the city lights. She looked calm, too calm. Giselle, he said quietly. We need to talk. She didn't turn around. You've already said enough. I never meant for it to go this far, Jacob insisted. Anna pushed things. I was under pressure. You know how hard this company has been. Giselle finally faced him. I know exactly how hard it's been, she said evenly. I was there for every failure. Every doubt. Every night you thought you wouldn't make it. Jacob swallowed. Then you know I didn't do this to hurt you. She took a step closer, her eyes steady. You did it knowing it would hurt me. That's worse. Desperation crept into his voice. You took everything from me. No, Giselle replied softly. I took back what was mine. Jacob's expression darkened. You think this is over? Giselle held his gaze. For me? Yes. For him, though, it wasn't. The next few days were chaos. Jacob tried everything: legal threats, emotional appeals, even public sympathy. He leaked partial stories, hoping to frame himself as a misunderstood founder betrayed by his wife. But Giselle had anticipated this too. Her lawyer moved quickly. Every document was airtight. Every recording legally obtained. The board stood firmly behind her. Investors, once charmed by Jacob, began to see the cracks in his integrity. Anna attempted to contact Giselle repeatedly: emails, messages, even voicemails filled with anger, pleading, and threats. Giselle blocked them all. Instead, she focused on rebuilding, not the company, but herself. She moved into a smaller, quieter place overlooking the river. The mornings were peaceful. No lies. No secrets. Just clarity. One afternoon, her lawyer called. It's done, he said. Jacob has agreed to step down completely. No lawsuits. No appeals. Giselle closed her eyes briefly, breathing in relief. Thank you. When she hung up, she expected to feel triumphant. Instead, she felt something gentler. Closure. Weeks later, Giselle attended her first board meeting as the majority shareholder. The room was filled with people who once overlooked her. Now, they listened carefully to every word she spoke. She didn't gloat. She didn't seek revenge. She led. Jacob watched from afar as the company thrived without him. Without deception. Without betrayal. His name faded from headlines. His charm lost its power. One evening, as Giselle walked along the river, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. You think you won. She stared at the screen for a moment, then typed calmly. I did. She blocked the number and slipped her phone into her pocket. The water shimmered under the moonlight. The city hummed softly behind her. Giselle smiled, not because she had defeated them, but because she had reclaimed herself. She had loved deeply. She had trusted fully. And when that trust was broken, she didn't crumble. She calculated. She endured. She rose. And that was the real inheritance no one could ever take from her.